The title of this PowerPoint is Understanding Text Features. This PowerPoint is created as one that you could use with older elementary, middle school, or high school students to teach them about understanding text features. Text features are things that appear in nonfiction, expository types of books. What is a feature? The word feature is used in many different contexts or situations. A feature is an important part of something. For example, what are some features of this coral reef? And on the left side, you can see some listed. You could have students look at the picture and label some things. So we have anemone, we have rocks, coral, water, sand, and so on. What are your facial features, parts of your face? Eyes, nose, mouth, chin, cheeks, for example. What are some features that you might see on a playground? And have the children name those. Text features are parts of text or books that draw your attention to important information, those things that are necessary for you to understand what it is you're reading. Next, you're going to look at some text features, and it's important here to have an assortment of nonfiction books or magazines that you could use with your students if you're going to work on something like this, so that they can see text features in a number of different items. The title of a piece of writing tells you what it's mostly about. This gives you an idea about what you're going to be reading about to activate prior knowledge. Look at some of the books that you brought. Notice things. How are the titles written? What kind of font do you see? Are the titles long or short? Are there subtitles to help explain more about what that passage is going to be about? Find the title of the article here. You can see that there's a subtitle as well. There's the title. Headings. Headings are part of the body of the reading that you're going to do. They introduce topics that are going to be in the text. Often they're written in bold print, larger print, or in colorful print so that they draw your attention. Look at this piece of writing again and see if you can identify the different headings. There we see that there are 3 different headings that introduce you again to a new part of a passage. Maybe you're not interested in reading about all of those different things, so you can pick and choose what it is you want to learn about. Now look through the books that you have. See if you can find headings. Are there some that are in bold print? Are there headings that are only a word? Are there headings that are as a question that's going to be answered in the passage or as phrases? Bold print is print that is darker or looks brighter than the rest of the sentence. Author used bold print to signal important information or new words. Italic print looks like this. It kind of looks like it's slanted a little bit, or if you're doing cursive writing. Authors use italics to signal important words, new ideas, or foreign words. Often they'll use one or the other in their text. Look through this passage and see if you can find the italicized words. And there you can see they've marked them, adaptations. Sometimes those bolded or italicized words are explained right in the text. Sometimes they're found in a glossary. Okay, here's some other ones. And then in this one, the author used bold print instead of italicized words. And there they're going to show you where they are. So if you're using this with students, then you can see that they can find the words and then find out if they're correct or not. Look for bold and italicized print now in the books that you've gathered. How often are words marked with this kind of print? Is there a glossary that defines these words? Why would it be important to pay attention to these words? So you want the students to understand that these are tools to help them understand what they're reading about. When you're reading fiction books, it's usually more familiar topics. But if they're reading a textbook, for example, or some other type of content book, then it's going to be information that may not be as familiar to them, and lots of tier 2 and tier 3 words that they may not know. So these print, the way that they use the print with the bold and the italics is going to help draw their attention that this is important to the meaning of this passage. We also have illustrations and photographs in pieces of writing. Illustrations are drawings. They're created by an artist. Illustrations can be very basic, or they could have lots of detail. Photographs are taken by a photographer. They show real objects in real settings, and there's usually quite a difference in those. How does the photograph help the reader understand this text? I'll read the text. The old schoolhouse was falling apart. It had been abandoned for so long that nature started to take over. Vines grew on the outside. Snow and rain caused wood to rot and beams to break. After the roof collapsed, trees and weeds grew where students once learned. By having that visual, it helps them to understand, if they've never seen something that's falling apart like that, like a building, to really understand what it is the author's trying to tell them. Look for photographs now in the books that you collected. Why do you think the author included this photo? How does this help the reader to understand key ideas? What can you learn from looking at the photo? Does the text make sense without the picture? When you have students who have a lower vocabulary level, or English learners who are learning new vocabulary, photographs can be very, very helpful for them to have that picture to really attach the meaning to. Illustrations. Pictures help readers to understand ideas. Why do you think the author chose to illustrate this text instead of using a photograph? And it could be that maybe we don't have any photographs of some old schools or one schoolhouse. And sometimes they do it because it has the feeling, if we're talking about old things, to maybe have an illustration instead of a photograph. Illustrations can do what photographs cannot. Often artists will use them to show things of the past, or just to simplify an idea, to draw attention to an idea. How does this illustration help a reader to understand this text? Okay, again, it shows them an idea of what it might have looked like. Look for illustrations in your books. Think about, why did the author use an illustration instead of a photograph? Is the style of the illustration appealing? What can you learn from the illustration? Often the illustrations also have labels or arrows pointing to different things. Captions are found underneath or around illustrations or photographs. They explain what's in the picture. So if a student can't read the text, they can learn from the picture, and often just that short explanation will help them to get some background knowledge or some understanding of the topic. See if you can find the caption here. And here. Look over the books that you have. What captions can you find? How do the captions help you to understand the pictures? And how are the captions written in different ways? So compare again across different books and different texts. There are other text features as well as the ones that was already mentioned. Here's a listing of some of those. Graphic aids, maps, timelines, bulleted lists, glossary, table of contents, index, sidebars, and captions. All of these are important and have their own place. You would want to introduce them a little at a time, a few at a time, not try to teach all of them. And when you're working these, if you're in a guided reading group or reading one-on-one, really take some time to introduce them to that and let them experience it. So choose a book that works well. So for instance, the glossary is usually in the back of the book, and those are definitions. So often I would not introduce those words before they read the book or the story, because I'd want them to use that text feature to learn the definition. Table of contents is going to be at the beginning of the book, and it helps them understand that when you're reading an informational book, you may not read it from beginning to end like you would a fiction story. You might be interested in just maybe the habitat of the animal or the food that they like to eat. So it helps them to find the portion of the text that they really want to read. The index, again, is in the back of the book, and it's more detailed than the table of contents or the glossary. It's going to go through specific terms or words and where they could find those in the book with a page number. Sidebars are a little bit like captions. They're along the side of the page usually. There might be a separate text box of some kind that usually gives just some extra information about something on that page. So you can ask your students, what have you learned about text features? And then what do you still wonder about them? The more experience they have with them, the more they'll understand how they can be a tool and to really use them. It's important for teachers to model that as well if you're reading a big book to younger children or reading a text along with a student.